There is a moment in every woman's life when silence feels louder than words, when calmness is the sharpest weapon, and when the decision not to react becomes the ultimate act of power. The world will provoke you, test you, and demand your attention. But like Medusa, you have the ability to hold your ground, unshaken, untouchable, guarding the peace that no one can take unless you hand it over. Medusa has long been misunderstood, cast as a monster, when in truth she is a mirror. She represents what happens when a woman is forced to protect herself in a hostile world. Her gaze is not destruction, it is a boundary. It says, "This is where you end, and I begin." In that gaze lies the secret to emotional self-mastery, the refusal to let others dictate your state of mind. Too often, women are told to be softer, quieter, more accommodating. Yet, Stoic wisdom and psychology teach us that true strength is not in yielding to every demand, but in holding steady in the storm. Medusa embodies that steadiness. Her serpents, alive and alert, symbolize the mind trained to notice every intrusion, yet disciplined enough not to strike without purpose. To be like Medusa is to reject the narrative of victimhood and instead embrace the role of protector of your inner world. Your energy, your focus, your calm, these are treasures. They are not up for negotiation. Once you learn to guard them, you step into a power that no insult, no expectation, and no rejection can dismantle. This is not about becoming hard or unfeeling. It is about clarity, self-command, and boundaries. It is about walking through life with the gaze of Medusa, not to turn others to stone, but to remind them, and yourself, that your peace is sacred and it will not be surrendered. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you something. How often do you feel drained by the world's constant demands, by expectations at work, by family pressures, by the invisible weight of judgment that seems to follow women everywhere? If the answer is often, then this message is for you. Be like Medusa. Guarding your inner peace in a world that tests you is more than a phrase, it is a philosophy of survival and empowerment. It takes the wisdom of Stoicism, the clarity of psychology, and the misunderstood archetype of Medusa to create a guide for women who want to reclaim their strength, master their emotions, and stop giving away their peace for free. Here, you will learn how to stand firm when others push against you, how to use silence as strategy, how to set boundaries without apology, and how to protect your mind from the chaos around you. Medusa's lesson is not about destruction, it is about defense. It is about transforming the way you respond so that nothing external can break what is whole inside you. But before we continue, I want to invite you to take part in this journey actively. If you find meaning in these words, don't just watch in silence, subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like and share your voice in the comments. Let us know, from which country and which city are you joining us? Let's build a circle of women across the world who choose self-mastery over reactivity, peace over chaos, and strength over surrender. Because in the end, this is not just about Medusa. It is about you. It is about the woman you become when you decide that your inner peace is not up for negotiation. The first step toward guarding your inner peace is recognizing how much of it you give away unconsciously. Every time you allow an offhand comment to ruin your mood, every time you let someone else's urgency become your emergency, every time you internalize criticism that was never yours to carry, you hand over a piece of your calm. The truth is, most people do not steal our peace, we abandon it. Psychology calls this emotional reactivity, the tendency to respond instantly and intensely to external triggers. Stoicism, thousands of years earlier, described the same phenomenon, the surrender of one's tranquility to what lies outside of control. Both agree that the solution is awareness. To be like Medusa is to live with serpents of awareness, always alert to what is trying to enter your mental space, refusing to react before you have chosen how. Medusa's gaze is not an attack. It is a pause. It is the refusal to be drawn into every battle. Imagine how different your day would feel if, instead of answering every provocation, you mastered the art of withholding reaction. Silence is not weakness. On the contrary, silence can be the highest expression of power. When you choose not to respond, you remind yourself that your inner state belongs only to you. Many women struggle with this because society conditions them to be agreeable, to respond quickly, to please. Yet the constant rush to answer everyone else's needs is what leaves women exhausted and resentful. Guarding your peace means deliberately slowing down your responses, not because you are unsure, but because you value clarity over speed. This is how you begin to reclaim authority over your emotions. Consider the practice of the pause. When someone criticizes you, when a text arrives that stirs anger, when a colleague pressures you into saying yes, pause. Count to 3. Breathe. Ask yourself, will my reaction serve me or will it drain me? This moment of reflection is the serpent raising its head, reminding you that not every movement requires a strike. In therapy, this is known as response inhibition, the ability to hold back impulsive behavior. In Stoic practice, it is the discipline of assent, choosing not to automatically agree with the impression that your mind first presents. Both speak of the same inner muscle, the strength to delay, to evaluate, to act with intention. Boundaries begin internally, not externally. Before you can say no to others, you must learn to say no to your own impulses. You must recognize that not every thought is worth following, not every emotion is worth indulging, not every conflict is worth engaging. Medusa's serpent symbolized this vigilance, always watching, always discerning, always deciding what deserves attention. Women who practice this shift notice profound changes. Anxiety lessens because they are no longer pulled in every direction. Confidence grows because they act from intention, not compulsion. Relationships improve because silence and calm responses often carry more weight than heated words. Peace becomes not something fragile, but something fortified. This does not mean withdrawing from the world or becoming passive. Quite the opposite. It means engaging with the world from a position of strength rather than reaction. It means that when you do choose to speak, to act, to fight, it is deliberate, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Guarding your inner peace begins with one choice repeated daily: the choice to pause, to observe, to respond only when it serves your well-being. This is how you begin to embody Medusa, not as a figure of fear, but as a figure of mastery. Not every battle is worth fighting, but every moment of peace is worth protecting. Once you learn to pause, the next challenge is learning to set boundaries that hold. Many women fear boundaries because they confuse them with rejection. They worry that saying no will make them less lovable, less agreeable, less worthy. Yet, in truth, the absence of boundaries does not create love. It creates resentment. Without limits, peace is constantly invaded and exhaustion becomes inevitable. Medusa's power lies in the fact that no one can cross her line without consequence. Her gaze is a warning. This is my space. This is my peace. Cross at your own risk. For women today, boundaries are that gaze. They are not about punishing others, but about protecting the energy you need to live fully. Boundaries remind you and the world that your time, your attention, and your emotions are valuable. Psychology confirms this. Studies on assertiveness training show that people with clear boundaries experience less stress, fewer symptoms of burnout, and greater life satisfaction. Boundaries are not selfish. They are psychological oxygen. Without them, you suffocate under the weight of others' demands. With them, you breathe, expand, and thrive. The Stoics believe that peace comes from focusing only on what is within your control. Boundaries are a practical application of this truth. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control the access they have to you. You cannot stop the world from demanding, but you can decide how much of yourself you give. Boundaries transform chaos into order by clearly defining where your responsibility begins and ends. Practicing boundaries starts small. Say no to the unnecessary meeting. Silence the phone at dinner. Protect the first hour of your morning for yourself. These small acts are like training the serpents of Medusa, teaching them to lift their heads whenever intrusion approaches. With time, your mind recognizes that peace is not random. It is something you design, moment by moment. Guilt often arises here. Women, especially, are taught to equate self-protection with selfishness. But guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing, it is often a sign of growth. When you first begin setting boundaries, guilt is simply your brain adjusting to new rules. Over time, as you see the benefits of preserved peace, guilt fades, replaced by pride. Boundaries also clarify relationships. Those who respect your limits reveal themselves as allies. Those who resist them reveal themselves as takers. Medusa's myth teaches us this. When you guard your space, you will intimidate some. That is not your failure, it is their discomfort with your strength. Better to face their discomfort than to live in constant surrender. In therapy, boundary work is often paired with self-validation, the practice of affirming your worth even when others disapprove. When you remind yourself, my needs are legitimate, you train your mind to stay steady even if others react negatively. This is Medusa's lesson. Your peace does not need external approval to be real. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. You can open them, invite others in, and share generously, but only by choice, not by pressure. The power lies in knowing you can close the door when you need to. This is freedom, not isolation. Guarding your inner peace means accepting that not everyone will like your boundaries, but everyone will respect the woman who stands firm in them. To be like Medusa is to let your gaze remind the world that your life is not an open territory. It is sacred ground, and only those who honor it may step inside. Guarding your peace does not mean avoiding conflict at all costs. Instead, it means choosing which conflicts are worth your energy. Medusa reminds us that not every fight deserves our gaze. Some people seek reaction, not resolution. Some situations are designed to drain, not to heal. Learning to discern the difference is one of the highest forms of self-mastery. Psychology calls this selective engagement. It is the recognition that your emotional resources are finite and therefore they must be invested with intention. If you attempt to respond to every provocation, you scatter your strength and leave yourself depleted. If you reserve your response only for what truly matters, you maintain power. The Stoics describe this as the discipline of action, focusing only on what serves virtue and ignoring what is trivial. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Medusa embodies this principle through her gaze. She does not chase battles. She waits, still and centered, and responds only when necessary. Imagine a workplace scenario where criticism is unfairly directed at you. The instinct is to defend yourself immediately, to fight every detail. But in doing so, you validate the chaos of the critic. To be like Medusa is to remain silent in the face of noise, to let calmness unsettle the aggressor more than any argument could. Later, when the time is right, you respond with clarity and precision not to win a petty fight, but to preserve your dignity. In personal relationships, the same principle applies. Not every disagreement with a partner, friend, or family member must escalate into confrontation. Sometimes, the greatest strength is restraint, the choice to save your voice for conversations that matter, rather than scattering it in endless arguments that change nothing. This does not mean suppression of emotion. Suppression is denial, and denial eventually bursts. Instead, it means channeling your emotion with intention. Anger becomes fuel for boundaries. Sadness becomes clarity about unmet needs. Anxiety becomes awareness of what is outside your control. Each feeling can serve you if you direct it instead of letting it direct you. A practical exercise is the 3-question filter. Before engaging in conflict, ask, does this matter in 1 week? Does this matter in 1 year? Does this matter for my integrity? If the answer is no, it is not worth your peace. If the answer is yes, then your response becomes purposeful, not impulsive. Medusa teaches us that the power of presence often outweighs the power of words. Her silence is not weakness, it is strategy. In psychology, this is known as non-engagement, a conscious refusal to feed destructive cycles. Every woman who has stayed calm in the face of provocation knows how unsettling that calmness can be to others. It shifts the balance of power. To live this way requires trust in yourself, the confidence that not reacting does not make you invisible, but uncheckable. You do not disappear by staying calm. You become a mountain in the storm, immovable. Others may shout, but their noise breaks against your stillness. Guarding your inner peace, then, is not about avoiding all battles. It is about choosing them. It is about letting silence carry your strength until the right moment calls for action. To be like Medusa is to let your gaze declare, I will not waste my energy on every storm, but when I move, it will matter. Guarding your peace also requires mastering the relationship you have with solitude. Many fear solitude because they mistake it for loneliness. Yet solitude, when chosen, is the foundation of clarity. It is the space where you hear your own thoughts without interruption, where you remember who you are without the noise of external judgment. Medusa's isolation has often been portrayed as punishment, but it can also be read as power, the ability to stand alone without crumbling. Psychology teaches that solitude is essential for self-regulation. When we step back from constant social engagement, the nervous system resets, stress decreases, and cognitive clarity returns. Women who learn to claim solitude as a practice discover that it is not emptiness but replenishment, a well they can draw from when the world demands too much. The Stoics valued solitude as a laboratory of the mind. They believed that wisdom grows in reflection, not in distraction. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you can improve." The process is mutual, but he also insisted that one must retreat regularly into oneself to test thoughts, refine values, and strengthen the soul against external chaos. For women today, solitude can be revolutionary. A society that expects constant availability at work, at home, online, often punishes those who withdraw. To choose solitude is to resist this demand. It is to say, my energy is mine and I decide when and how to share it. Solitude becomes the shield that guards inner peace. Practical solitude does not require mountains or monasteries. It can be a morning walk without a phone, a closed door for 30 minutes of journaling, or an evening where you choose reflection instead of scrolling. The quality of solitude is not measured by length, but by intention. 10 minutes of undistracted silence can reset a mind that has been stretched thin all day. Many women struggle with guilt when taking time alone. They feel they are neglecting others, being unproductive, or wasting time. Yet solitude is not withdrawal from responsibility, it is preparation to meet responsibility with strength. Just as a warrior sharpens her sword before battle, a woman sharpens her mind in solitude. Without that sharpening, her responses grow dull and reactive. Medusa's solitude gave her strength others could not understand. She was not weakened by distance from the world. She was armed by it. When you enter solitude willingly, you too begin to cultivate this strength. You realize that your worth is not measured by how much you give, but by how clearly you stand in yourself. Solitude also teaches you to tolerate silence. In a world filled with noise, silence can feel threatening at first, as though you are missing something. But over time, silence becomes a sanctuary. In silence, emotions settle. In silence, decisions clarify. In silence, peace grows roots. To be like Medusa is to recognize solitude not as exile, but as strategy. It is a conscious act of stepping back so you can step forward stronger. It is not the rejection of the world, but the preservation of self before re-engaging with it. Guarding your inner peace requires the courage to choose solitude even when the world demands constant presence. It requires you to see stillness as strength, not weakness. For in solitude, you discover that peace is not found in others, it is built within, and once built, it cannot be taken away. Guarding your inner peace also means mastering the art of perception. What we see and how we interpret it often matters more than the event itself. Two people can live the same experience and walk away with entirely different emotions. One feels destroyed, the other feels challenged. Medusa's gaze is a metaphor for perception. Her eyes transform not because of magic, but because of how she forces others to see themselves. Cognitive psychology describes this as cognitive appraisal, the process by which we assign meaning to events. Stress is not caused by the event alone, but by the meaning we attach to it. When you train yourself to reinterpret experiences, you shift from victimhood to mastery. To be like Medusa is to control your gaze, not toward others, but toward life itself. The Stoics emphasized this discipline relentlessly. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." In other words, nothing external can harm your peace unless you grant it permission through perception. This principle is timeless. Your reaction is dictated not by the event, but by the story you tell yourself about the event. Consider rejection, a wound many women know deeply. The automatic perception might be, "I was not good enough." But a reframed perception could be, "That was not aligned with me, and now space is open for something better." The external event has not changed, but the meaning has, and with it, the emotional outcome. Another example: criticism at work. The reactive mind hears insult. The trained mind hears feedback, or at times, the projection of someone else's insecurity. By controlling perception, you choose whether to internalize chaos or to remain steady. Medusa's gaze reminds us, perception has power. It can petrify or it can clarify. Practicing this shift requires awareness of automatic thoughts. When a negative emotion arises, pause and ask, "What story am I telling myself right now?" Then ask, "Is there another way to see this?" This simple exercise interrupts the cycle of reactivity and creates space for calm. Neuroscience confirms that reframing perception changes the brain itself. The practice of cognitive reappraisal strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for emotional regulation, while calming the amygdala, which triggers fear and anger. In plain terms, perception training makes you biologically calmer, stronger, and less reactive. Medusa embodies this neurological truth. Her serpents, always moving, symbolize the constant stream of thoughts. Some are poisonous, others protective. The art lies in directing them, choosing which thoughts to feed and which to starve. Peace is not the absence of thoughts, but the discipline of perception. Women who practice perception mastery discover freedom from external validation. They stop asking, "What does this mean about me?" and start asking, "What does this mean for me?" That small shift moves life from personal attack to personal growth. Guarding your inner peace, then, is inseparable from guarding your perception. To be like Medusa is to know that you cannot control what the world shows you, but you can control how you look at it. And when you control your gaze, nothing outside can break what you hold within. To be like Medusa is not to live in anger, isolation, or fear, it is to live in clarity. Her myth, often twisted into horror, is in truth a guide for women in a world that tests them endlessly. She teaches that peace is not handed to you. It is protected by you. She teaches that strength is not measured by reaction, but by restraint. And she teaches that solitude, boundaries, and perception are not weaknesses, they are shields. Psychology affirms what philosophy has long known. Your well-being is not determined by external events, but by the discipline of your mind and the choices you make in response. Each pause, each boundary, each reframed perception is a step toward mastery. Women who embrace this path discover that they are not fragile, but unshakable. They no longer beg the world for respect, they command it by the way they stand in themselves. Guarding your inner peace is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice, a discipline, a way of living. To be like Medusa is to remember, your gaze defines your world. Let it be firm, let it be clear, let it protect what is sacred. And above all, never surrender the calm that is yours to keep.